Perhaps without further ado, I would like to hand over the seminar, give the floor to our first guest, Christian Kasera, who's journalist and author of a book on co-ops and their impact on work and society. I'll put the link into the chat for those who want to look for the book. So Christian, thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me. First of all, Robert told me it's okay that I speak in German as you're going to translate it. Thank you. That makes it much easier for me, actually, because I recently discovered, explaining to a friend of mine, that I missed some of the vocabulary necessary for the whole thing. Yeah, so I'm gonna switch to German.
Perfect.
Also, herzlichen Dank für die Einladung. Ich soll sozusagen hier einen kleinen Überblick geben
I'm supposed to
über
give a short overview of the top.
Verwaltung. Kurz zu mir, ich arbeite als Lektor bei der APA, bei der Austria Presseagentur, und bin seit 5, 6,
I'm a member of the Austrian Press Agency, and I've been a journalist for 5 years. For 2 years, I worked as the Austrian correspondent of a German newspaper. In the last year, I worked on the topic of cooperatives and self-management. I also published a book. And during the last 2-3 years, I did a lot of research. And now I have about 25 minutes, and I'm going to try to give you an overview in the next 10 to 15 minutes on some of the things that I found out. And then we will have 10 minutes for discussion, questions, or embarrassing silence in the worst case. I started researching this topic in 2016 and 2017. Back then, I stumbled across a problem. There are a lot of books that are dealing with the history or the legal foundations of self-management and cooperatives, how to found a cooperative, what other legal forms are there of economic democracy, and so on. But what I was missing, what I couldn't find, was a sort of collection of best practices. So a collection of examples of how this could actually work and in what direction it could develop. I talked about this topic with a lot of different people. There's a big prejudice going around that the topic of democratic self-governance is only possible in very small projects or very small enterprises of maybe 5 to 10, 15 people at a maximum. At a very, very early point during my research, I found out that this isn't true at all. The 7th largest industry manufacturing, Mondragon in Spain, has thousands of employees, and they still manage to organize themselves democratically, more or less, at least when you compare it to a usual enterprise. And I would like to start with Mondragon right away. As I said before, it's the 7th largest industry company in Spain. It's a conglomerate of different cooperatives. So it's not just one, it's a sort of umbrella organization that includes about 100 smaller cooperatives. All of these cooperatives have committed to adhering to certain democratic principles and standards. So they elect representatives of the companies, of the cooperatives that are then sent into the umbrella organization and so on. Mondragon developed in the course of the Spanish Civil War. It is located in a small city, also called Mondragon or Arasate in Basque. It has about 10,000 inhabitants, and all of us probably know about the atrocities of the Spanish Civil War. Just think about Guernica, where an entire village was destroyed. So this county was fought for very atrociously, and there were villages that have ceased to exist. A priest in one of these small villages thought about how to overcome these difficulties and these differences and to reconnect the people with each other. And he thought about how to go about doing this. And the answer was common projects, education, and so on. So this was in the beginning of the 1940s. And it took a long time because it wasn't easy to implement this in the small city of Mondragon. Now it has 10,000 inhabitants. Back then, probably fewer, but it was still difficult to make this happen. So only in the 1950s, 10 years after the launch of the project, a cooperative was founded by 5 engineers. What they wanted to do was to found a cooperative for products such as blenders, for example. So it was an industry company, manufacturing company, and they were producing these blenders in Mondragon. And they not only wanted to let the people work together, but also co-decide. So everybody who started working there at Mondragon became a co-owner, so to speak. But they also wanted to make sure that people had access to education. So they founded schools for the children of the workers, but also for other people who lived in Mondragon. All of this has developed during the past 70 years. And now Mondragon has become the 7th largest company in Spain. It's an umbrella organization of 100 cooperatives, but not just this. It also has universities, organization centers. Was there 2 years ago in the summer. It was really interesting to see because you go through the rambling hills of the Basque Country, and at some point the GPS tells you that you're here, that you're there, you're at your destination. I was wondering because I was standing in front of a very small building, just a small office on a hill, on top of a hill, and it said Mondragon office. So I introduced myself with the security guard. I only speak a few words of Spanish. Unfortunately, somebody from the PR department came along and explained everything to me. It was very interesting to hear. Due to its size and democratic structures, Mondragon is a role model for many cooperatives, especially in the US. And this is why more than 2,000 people a year go to this small village and take a look at how this actually works. And they have advertising material in a dozen languages. So I was watching a 15-minute video in German about the structure of Mondragon. As I said, it's a role model for many cooperatives.
Gut, dann nicht. Irgendwas habe ich gehört.
I was just hearing something. So in the course of my research, I talked to Dario Azzedini, a cooperative researcher, who considers this as a very positive thing, but he also has some criticism when it comes to Mondragon, which I also found interesting. As I said before, they have 80,000 employees or workers there, and basically they follow a democratic structure, but there is, of course, also a hierarchy. And Dario Azzedini, this very renowned New York-based cooperative researcher, said that the problem with Mondragon is that they have certain entrepreneurial mentality, if you will. So each employee, each coworker is turned into an entrepreneur. And of course, they want the best for the company and for this conglomerate. And if that means that certain cooperatives go bankrupt, that's just the way it is. And that's something that they also said was true when I asked him about it. So you could criticize this, but the positive thing is that when they have to close down a cooperative, the people are not laid off; they're sent to other cooperatives. The same happens when people reach a certain age, then they are paid a pension until they are eligible for the state-funded pension. I'm going to go to the next cooperative now. Mondragon was an example of what can happen from a common positive vision in a dire situation, but also intended from the beginning on as a cooperative. I'm going to go for the opposite example now. The first cooperative I visited was in Thessaloniki in Greece. We all know the situation in Greece. It's not very comfortable right now. The average salaries are very low. Unemployment is skyrocketing, especially with youth. It's scary, to be honest. And in Thessaloniki in 2010, there was a very interesting project being done, Viume, and they produced soap. So in Vienna, you can buy the soap. You can buy it in Germany and France, and it developed out of an industry, a manufacturing company that produced glue for tiles originally. And then, of course, of the Greek debt crisis around 2010, this company was just closed down. So the workers, at one day, a Monday, they went to work and the doors were closed and no one knew what was happening. Why can't we enter our place of work anymore? The business was in trouble a long time before. They had to work for 6 months without receiving their salaries before.
May I ask everyone who's not speaking, yes, thank you, to mute. Thank you.
Ja, zurück zu diesem Viume. Also die Leute standen da
Now back to Viume. So the people were standing in front of the closed gates of the building. It was about 60 people who were affected. They didn't know what to do. And after several months of deliberation and planning, especially together with leftist groups in Thessaloniki, they said, well, they owe us money. All in all, over €1 million. We're just going to reopen the gates ourselves. We're going to occupy this enterprise and do something useful with it. And that's what they did. They just entered the manufacturing company and started producing soap again, because they said it's our company anyway. They owe us $1 million, €1 million, if not more. And all across Thessaloniki, there was solidarity for these people. So the people came and supported them. They brought them food, they brought them money, they bought the soap that they produced with these machines that were originally meant for tile glue. And the people from Viume said that they wouldn't rest at that. They wanted to give back some of this solidarity. And that's why they started to initiate a cooperative network all across Greece. Many agricultural companies went bankrupt during the crisis, and they also were occupied by the people who used to work there. And by now, there are more than 1,000 cooperatives in Greece that have developed from that. And they founded a sort of network where they would directly market their products at the farmers market. So it was a network of more than several thousand people. And then, of course, news travels through word of mouth. They just tell each other, well, there's a farmers market and there's another one. And so they could sell all these products themselves. And the people at Viume do more than that. It's very interesting. The offices at this company is incredibly large. They would only use 25%, so they refurbished everything, and they opened a clinic for poor people, and they also have doctors come there twice a week and offer sort of medical provision basic medical services for the people living there. They have also started a bakery where people can buy cheap food or even get it for free. So the people at Viome really want to give something back and have a positive impact on their surroundings. If you compare Mondragon with Viome, Mondragon is this organically grown, incredibly large company, cooperative, and Viome has only just begun, and it's very different because the first one was meant as a cooperative from the beginning on, and the second one started as an occupation, and it works for both. Mondragon has 80,000 people involved, and Viome only has 24. So that does make for a difference in the way that they're both organized. With Mondragon, you can see the internal elections where an advisory body is put together, and then they're sent to the umbrella organization. And Viome, they just meet every morning at 6 a.m. and just talk about for an hour what's happening, who's in charge of what, and what you're going to do at work during the next couple of days. So I'm not going to talk about the third cooperative because I don't have a lot of time left. I just want to ask you, is there anything you would like to ask me, or is there anything else I can tell you? A little bit of time is left, so you have 10 minutes. So maybe I will talk about the third company anyway. Scoopty in France. How can I put this? It's something in between. It's situated near Marseille in Cheminot. It's a small village. It's basically an industrial environment. You have Burger King's, McDonald's, restaurants, and a couple of thousand people living there. Originally, Scopti is a tea manufacturer, belonged to Unilever, and they told the employees from suddenly at one day, we're going to close this. We're going to move to Poland. Either you come with us, earning 500 euros a month, or you can just stop. So people thought about what to do. They turned to the Workers' Council, and they told them, if you want to occupy the enterprise, we will help you. And they said, yes, we'd love that, but what about afterwards? How can we put them under pressure? How can we put pressure on them to change something? And Skopje's plan was relatively simple. They said that we have this structure. We don't want this structure anymore where everything is managed from top down. We hate the work climate that we have here. We want to self-govern. We want to be at the same level, all of us. That's easy to say, but they actually did something. They occupied the enterprise, and Unilever just said, we don't care, we're just going to wait it out. But Skopje didn't stop. They occupied it for 3 years overall, 1,969 days to be exact. They were supported by all of France. The neighboring village had a communist mayor back then, and he made sure that they had financial backing and food and clothes and everything that they needed. All over France, politics had to deal with this issue. Right-wing politics said, close them down. And the other side said, no, we have to support them no matter the cost. And after 3 years, Unilever just backed down. They told them that they could keep the production site, including all the machinery, and they also said that they would give them a certain financial basis as well as education trainings to make sure that they could self-operate this manufacturing company. The interesting thing is that it works really well. It's not a small initiative such as Viome. It's not a large cooperatives such as Mondragon, it's somewhere in the middle. Their teas can be bought all across France, and they're trying to grow. And just like VMA, they're trying to give something back to the people who supported them. And with Scoop Tea, it has an ecological component. The environment was known for a specific type of tea, which can't be produced anymore, because it's just not worth anymore. It's lime blossom. And they were talking to the farmers who lived there. And now they're trying to do that in a fair trade way, organically, and also revitalize an industry that was all but dead. So Scoop Tea knew from the beginning on that they wanted to self-govern, but it's not a small initiative such as Viome with only 20 people. It's also not a big company like Mondragon. So that's everything from my side. Thank you very much, Christian. That was a very interesting, broad overview of the different types of cooperatives that we have in Europe. There's a question in the chat. Are there any examples for Austria that you can tell us? Yes, of course. When it comes to cooperatives, Austria is a very institutionalized country. I myself live in a building managed by a cooperative. I cannot co-decide anything. I also work at a cooperative where I cannot decide anything. But of course, in Austria, there are a lot of small cooperatives and initiatives. At the border of Vienna, in a village bordering Vienna, there's Obertura, which is a solidary agricultural company, maybe 10 people, self-governed, self-organized, who produce anything that you need, like eggs, grains, and so on, vegetables. It's all organic. They don't fertilize chemically, and they are self-organized. So they make sure that the earnings are equally distributed among them. And also they want to grow to a certain degree at least. And from this project, Obertura, a foundation has developed, the so-called Numus Foundation. And what they're trying to do is to save land from the market economy. So people who say that they have a plot, they have a house, but I don't want to sell it at terrifying prices. I want to make sure that this land is used afterwards in a useful way, in a meaningful way, and they give it to the foundation, and that makes sure that that can't happen, and everything is organized and managed through democratic structures. In Otterkring in Vienna, there was a printing company, but unfortunately they went bankrupt, so it's maybe not the best example. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the participants?
Okay, here from Dimitri. What about competition with traditional business who exploit their workers and can decrease prices to kill cooperatives as competitors? Also quasi, was ist mit dem Verhältnis Konkurrenz zu traditionellen?
So what about the relationship between competition and traditional businesses? If you lower the prices through exploitation, we're going to have another guest speak about this issue afterwards. But the question is, how can you describe this relationship? And is it not true that the cooperatives suffer from this relationship because they are trying to offer fair working conditions and they still have to deal with this type of competition? That is, in fact, a problem. That is true. All the cooperatives, about a dozen that I visited, I asked this question. what about the competition? And all of them answered me honestly, we know that we live in a capitalist society and we just have to deal with it. The printing company in Ottakring had this exact problem. They just could not compete with the prices on the market and they went bankrupt. A negative example would also be Oasis in Bolzano in South Tyrol. It's a social cooperative that is trying to help addicts, especially alcoholics, and reintegrate them into the labor market. And they work together with a gardening company. And this project is working very well, but now all across South Tyrol, such cooperatives are developing and they compete with each other. But Oasis is has a very good reputation, and that's what helps them. And that's also something that the people told me that I talked with. We have a reputation, and people believe in us, and that's why they support us. But that is something, of course, that every cooperative suffers from. VMA pays its members 400 euros per month, and that's it. You can't live on that. And that is the same for all cooperatives. The competition can cause cooperatives to sink. You could work around that problem by taking over entire production chains, from mining, for example, to refining, to producing, manufacturing. And that would immunize them against certain market economy related volatilities. Thank you